Okay, hello, welcome to class today, friends. So happy you're here. We are going to be making some delicious chocolate chip cookies because it's Friday and it's almost Mother's Day, and it's going to be a lot of fun to make these, well, for mom or whoever else you want to this weekend. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Megan Faulkner Brown, and I am the Sweet Tooth Fairy. I, lots of years ago, started a retail bakery here in Utah. That's where we're doing this from. And we have a handful of locations here along the Wasatch Front. And today I am at the American Craft Studio. We're gonna film and record some awesome cookies. I have partnered with American Crafts to bring you at your local Michaels stores some fun food crafting items like sprinkles and meltables and cake and cookie mixes and all sorts of fun things. And so happy to be here. Again, thank you for coming. And let's get to it, shall we? So first off, I just want to start off and say that we will have this recipe available for you. So I'm going to go through it, and some of the measurements are already pre-measured, but I will talk you through it. But don't feel pressure to have to write everything down, because we will get it posted along with the video when it's uploaded with Michaels. So thanks again, and let's get started. So one thing that, and you'll notice in the recipe when we have it posted, but I typically like to write out my recipes like step by step. And when I say that, you think, most recipes are step by step, but they're not, right? It gives you a list of steps and then a list of ingredients. And so you kind of always have to be doing this like cross-referencing situation, but you'll see in the recipe, I have it spelled out where it says instruction, ingredient, instruction, ingredient. So as you go, you can follow it a little bit easier that way. So first things first, I am not in an actual kitchen. So I don't have an oven to bake any of these delicious cookies off. So there will be a little bit of TV magic that we'll have to employ. But if I did have an oven, right now I would ask you to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and to line a parchment paper, or line a tray with some parchment paper. So I'm just going to set that off here to the side. And the first step we're going to do is in a large mixing bowl, and I have a stand mixer over here. If you didn't have a stand mixer and you had a handheld one, that's totally great. But we're going to start off with 1 cup of unsalted butter. And the reason I prefer to have unsalted butter is because I like to control the amount of salt in my recipes. So that's why I like unsalted butter. This is at room temperature. You can see as I press, here we'll see, can press my finger into the butter. It's soft. It's been sitting out here, so it's nice and ready to be mixed. We're going to mix this on medium speed until it is nice and creamy. But we also need to plug it in first. Where's the plug? All right, hold please. There we go. All right. We have electricity, friends. So I'm going to turn this to about medium speed. And all we're doing right here is we're essentially creaming the butter so it gets nice and smooth. It's only about 1 minute. So while that's happening, I'm gonna have ready, it's 1 cup of packed brown sugar. And if you're not familiar with what packed brown sugar is, what that means is when you get your brown sugar out of the bag, you literally pack it down in there. So you press it and you make it nice and condensed, and you level it off right at that 1 cup mark for this recipe. Let's see. I will need a rubber spatula too, if you don't mind, please. Thank you. All right. So hopefully you can see that our butter is nice and creamy. I'm going to kind of improvise here for a sec and use this offset spatula to scrape down the sides. Just clean it up a little bit on the sides for when we add in our sugars. So I'm going to add in our 1 cup of brown sugar. And this might come as a surprise to you, but there's a story behind this. This is actually powdered sugar. Okay, so I don't know about you, but there's not very many recipes cookie recipes that I've used that have called for powdered sugar. And the story behind this is once upon a time when I was working on this recipe for a little ebook that I did, I was out of regular sugar, just granulated sugar. So I thought, why the heck not? I'm going to go ahead and try powdered. So I tried the powdered sugar in there. Thank you, dear. And they turned out so good. So instead of like remaking the recipe with the granulated sugar, I just thought, why not? We're just going to keep the powdered sugar in the recipe, and it's so yum. So I digress, but back to the sugar. So we have the 1 cup of brown sugar. We have 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. And what you're going to want to do, again, even if it's with a handheld or with this standstill, you're going to want to, anytime you add powdered sugar to anything, kind of slowly beat it, right, initially. Because if not, you get this big poof of powdered sugar in your face, which can be fun and make you look like you're working really hard, but it's unnecessary. So anyway, so I'm going to put this back down. Oops. And we're going to lock it into place, hopefully. And a lot of stand mixers do have a setting on there that say stir. So we're just going to give it a little bit of almost like a pulse even. And we are going to first incorporate them together. And then as soon as I know that the powdered sugar isn't going to puff up everywhere, I'm going to increase the mixer speed to medium. And I'm just going to let it mix until it gets light and fluffy for about 2 to 3 minutes. We'll just let it do its thing. And here in a sec, I am going to take my spatula and kind of scrape down the sides. And that is just so that when things are, as you're mixing them, they might have like spilled out to the edge of the bowl, and you want to make sure that you can scrape it down in and mix it into the rest of the ingredients. So you want to try to avoid like just a big lump of butter that maybe didn't get folded in with the sugars that well. So I'm going to stop. Yes, dear.
Can you verify the amount of powdered sugar that you put in?
Yes, so 3/4 cup.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You're welcome. So I'm just scraping down the sides. And again, that's just to make sure that we fully incorporate all of the ingredients that we have in here so far, which are only 3, but we want to make sure we get them nice and blended. So see how I've just kind of scraped it down. And then I'm going to, again, turn on the mixer and just let it mix together at about medium speed for another minute or so till it's just nice and light and fluffy. While it's mixing, I do have a funny story that has to do with mixing. One time I was recording a video like this using a mixer, and a part had come loose while it was mixing, doing its thing, and the glass bowl shattered everywhere on camera while I was doing it. It was really funny. So probably one of the best bloopers to date that we've had. So, okay. Here we go. It's looking real good. Nice and fluffy. So in total, I would say that was about 3 minutes of mixing the butter and the sugars together, creaming them together. And I'm again just gonna scrape it down for the next step. So we stopped the mixer, we've kind of scraped down the bowl, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add an egg, 1 egg. So just 1 egg. And I still, after all these years, I'm a 2-handed egg cracker just to be super, super safe. So we're gonna do 1 egg. We're gonna get 2 tablespoons of milk. I have found it doesn't really matter which kind of milk you use. In this case, we've used whole milk. Just gonna add it to the egg. And then I'm gonna take 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. We're gonna add that in. Vanilla is one of my favorite ingredients. It's just makes everything so rich and so delicious. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just really gently gonna whisk together the egg and the milk and the vanilla. Just kind of slightly beat the egg in with it. This looks like the beginnings of a yummy French toast dip situation, might I add. Okay, so again, we mix those 3 together lightly, folded them together, and then slowly, while the mixer is going, I'm going to just pour in this mixture. So again, slowly being an important word, because if you turn it up high and it's whipping around really fast, the minute that you pour this into the bowl, it's just all gonna splatter all over the place. So to avoid mess and hurt pride, then let's just start it real slow. So I have this on the stir setting.
Megan, did you say that was 2 tablespoons of milk?
Yes, 2 tablespoons of milk, 1 egg, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract.
Thank
So
you.
similarly with what we just did in the previous step with creaming the butters and the sugars, as soon as they kind of look well incorporated, I'm gonna turn up the speed and just make sure that they whip together well. So I'm gonna stop it and scrape down the sides here again to make sure that when I increase the speed that it gets everything. And turn it back up to medium. So cute. And I have to say, while this is mixing, I have some screens here, and I can see a handful of little friends here baking alongside with me, and it is just the sweetest thing. I have 6 kids that are 14 all the way down to 3, and I have 2 at home right now who are 6 and 3 who are following along with grandma. So I'm so glad that you guys are here, and that is just, not gonna lie, it's making me a little emotional. Oh, it's so sweet. So thank you for being here. All right. So we've let those mix together. We're gonna turn it off and just let it rest. And our next step that we're gonna do is we are going to mix the dry ingredients together. And so what I've done is just grabbed an extra bowl off that we can have off to the side. And we're gonna add in, it's 3.5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So 3/4 cup, or excuse me, 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So what I like to do when I'm measuring my flour is, it's kind of a hybrid approach of the great debate about should you, dip your spoon into the flour bag or your measuring cup, or do you take a spoon and kind of lift it in? I kind of do a little bit of a hybrid. So whatever, if you have strong feelings about putting flour into your measuring cup, then you do it the way that you feel comfortable with. But I typically kind of just put about half of the measuring cup down anyway, and then fill it up with a spoon. And then I just take like a spatula or a knife and I level it off so it's nice and flat, just like that. So we're going to do that three times with our 1 cup measuring cup rather. Oh, let me move it over this way so you guys can see better. So see how I just kind of level it off just like that? And again, you don't have to have like a fancy spatula. If you just have like the back end of a knife, you can use that too. That'll work great. So there's 2 cups. Oops. We get 3. My little 3-year-old, whenever I'm baking and there's flour out, he thinks it's sugar. So he puts a lot of it in his mouth initially, expecting it to be really sweet. And then he's sadly mistaken that it's not. Okay, so that was 3 cups. I actually in studio only have a 1/4 cup measuring spoon. So I'm gonna do this twice. So that's 3 1/4. And then here's our 3 1/2. All right. So next, I'm going to grab, it's 1 teaspoon of baking soda, which I had actually had pre-measured, and then it's 1/2 teaspoon of just table salt. And I'm going to pour it in with the flour. And then I'm just going to take a whisk and mix them together to just like evenly distribute the soda and the salts with the flour. After I scrape down the sides of the bowl, I'm gonna gradually add the dry mixture of flour and soda and salt to our wet mixture of butter and sugar and eggs and milk and vanilla. So I'm gonna grab that spatula again, scrape down the sides of the bowl. And this is a fancy mixer. I'm gonna lift this up, but again, if you don't have it, that's totally fine. You can just spoon it in. But I lifted the top of the mixer in, and I'm gonna actually go ahead and add all of this in right now. All right. Okay, so back to when what we did with the first step with the butter and the sugar, where we start slowly, and then what we did also with the eggs, we're going to do the same thing here with the flour, because again, if you turn it on super high right now, it would just erupt all over the place. So I'm even kind of giving it on its lowest setting, like a little bit of like a pulsing action. So I have it on low, and we're just gonna let it do its thing. And what you'll start to find is everything should start to pull away from the bowl. And that's how I have found that you know when a recipe, when a cookie dough is the right texture, when you can see that the dough pulls away from the bowl. It's not leaving like a little bit of a skiff of batter around, or excuse me, of dough around the edge. But you can also, if it turns out like if you're doing this, because I know sometimes that no matter where you are in the country, like your flour might have like a different consistency, or your butter might have, I don't know, a little bit more water, whatever it is in it. So if you're looking at your dough right now and it's like really, really crumbly, then make sure that you've let it mix together for a couple minutes. But if it's still just like super crummy, just add like a tablespoon of milk back into it until it starts acting the way that you want it to act, meaning until it starts pulling away from the bowl that you're using. Then you know that you can stop, and then we can move on to the next step. So we're almost there with this. There are still some, a little bit of like residual batter at the bottom that I want to make sure I fold in at the top. So I'm just going to scrape it down one more time. And make sure that my thing is locked. All right, that's better. So it looks like we got everything from the bottom of the bowl. Okay. So here's where the like super fun part comes in. I should say that at this stage of the cookie dough, you could add any kind of chip or sprinkle or chopped candy or whatever it is that you would want to put in it. So for example, like today we're making my chocolate chip happy cookies, but if you wanted to do like a white chocolate raspberry cookie, you could put, you know, white chocolate chips in there. If you had like little dehydrated raspberries or even cranberries or anything that kind of, I call them inclusions, anything you would want to include into the batter at this point, you could put in. If you love peanut butter and you have peanut butter chips or butterscotch or anything like that, this is a really, really excellent just base dough for stuff like that. So if that's the case and you have extra chips lying around, or if you want to add, again, like peanut butter, caramel, or butterscotch or cinnamon into what we're already doing with the other chocolate chips, then feel free to do this. When you see the recipe and when we go through this, you'll see there's a lot of different chips that I have listed here. And that's just because I think there's so many fun, delicious options out there. So you can put, like if you're a dark chocolate person or you're a milk chocolate person, or if you're bittersweet, again, you can just pick whatever you want. Normally, I have found that my kids anyway, they're milk chocolate and semi-sweet chocolate fans. And growing up, my mom always mixed her chips in the cookies. So for our recipe today, I have semi-sweet, I have milk, I have white chocolate chips, I have like semi-sweet chocolate chunks. So we're just gonna add some of that stuff in there. The other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about that's just like a tiny bit of a sidestep, but you'll see how it plays out and plays fun into this recipe, is at your local Michael's stores, we have a variety of meltables that are available. And what meltables are like a confectionery coating, like a sugar, like a little bit of a sugar wafer type thing. And they're not technically chocolate. They're like a compound chocolate, which means you don't have to know how to temper them, which bodes really well if you're not a like serious chocolatier. So, so there's different colors and there's different flavors and a lot of options that are hopefully coming down in the pipeline. But if you head to your local Michael's, you can get these meltables. And what's been so fun for me is I essentially use these as chocolate chips inside of my cookie recipes. They add just a really fun element of color and sometimes surprise, right? I've actually used them when I've done like baby gender reveal parties, you know, if people want to say, oh, hey, we're having a girl or whatever, then you can just stuff these inside. And when they break open a cookie, they can see what they're having. So that's been something that's really fun. But also they're multi-purpose because we're going to melt some of them. I'm going to show you how you can decorate with them and just add a little bit of like pizzazz to your cookies. So right now, I'm going to bring some of these in a little bit into view overhead.
Hey, Megan?
Yes, dear.
While you're doing that, there's a great question. At this point, if no one wants to add anything, or if they do decide to add any items, would this be a great time to freeze the dough?
Okay, so that's a trick question because you definitely, if you wanted to freeze it at this stage because you like, let's say you knew, you know, down the road that you were going to get your inclusions or you liked plain cookies. The one thing to think through is that if you are going to mix stuff in later down the road, then you can for sure freeze it. But I would advise you to wait until we do the next step and freeze it because you can use a cookie scoop and freeze them in little, we call them dough pucks, right? So then, you know, you can then, when they're frozen, the next day or in 2 weeks, you can take them out of the freezer and bake them however you want. But if that's not what you're looking for, then you can totally freeze it at this stage. Just know you'll have to let it thaw, come back to room temperature, and then add in all of your other stuff and then, you know, roll your dough balls and then bake it off that way. So if it's an option for you to have the inclusions you want, then I would say hold off to freeze it until you have them. So hopefully that makes sense. Anything else, Felicia?
That is all. Everybody is just joining in, and like you said, as the kids that are joining, I could see them mixing away.
It's so great. It's so fun. All right. So again, there's kind of no rhyme or reason at this stage. Obviously, I have a recipe, but you kind of got to like read the room and play to the crowd, right? If there are people that you're making these for who maybe they don't love a lot of chocolate, then you can be a little bit more sparse in the quantities of the chocolate chips that you put in. Or if there's someone you know who super loves milk chocolate, then you can load extra milk chocolate chips into this. But I'm just going to add about 3/4 of a cup of a handful of these different inclusions in chocolate chips. Before I do that though, first, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you can put sprinkles inside of cookie dough as well. So I'm going to do that step first with the sprinkles because like I'm here under lights where the chocolate could be a little bit more melty, but depending upon like what the room temperature is or what's going on at your house, you don't want the chocolate chips to be like mixed so much in there that they kind of start melting into each other. So I'm first going to put some sprinkles in there. I'm just going to sprinkle some in the batter. Again, there's no like actual recipe you have to follow for this. And I'm just going to make sure that the sprinkles get well included into the cookie dough. And then after that, that's when I'm going to add in some of these like chocolate inclusions just to avoid any like pre-melting of the chocolate chips. So here we go. And here's another little plug. Again, at Michael's, so many fun, different sprinkle options for you. I hope you've had a chance to go and to see all the fun things that we have there. So with this, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. And I'm looking to see, okay, are they getting incorporated into the cookie dough? I'm going to add a little of these. These are little teensy tiny little hearts, little confetti hearts. Let's see if I can. The other thing that's fun is they just add like a little bit different texture, you know, to your cookie. And I know these are technically for Mother's Day, but if you had you know, if you're doing this around a different holiday, and let's say it's Valentine's Day, you can put in just like red and pink, or St. Patrick's Day, you can throw in green sprinkles. So it just adds just like a little bit of fun to what you have going on. Okay, so can you see? I don't know if you can see from here. I'll take some of the dough out and put it on the overhead so they can. You see how fun that is? There's just a little bit of sprinkles and confetti in there, which is so fun. All right. So now on to the chocolate chips. I'm going to take, again, just about half a cup to like 3/4 of a cup of a few of these flavors. So this is semi-sweet. Do a little, this is milk chocolate. Just gonna slowly is the key when you're adding at this step. You just want to fold them in. Ooh, wrong way. Okay, then I'm going to take some white chocolate chips and put those in. I'm going to put a few chunks in. And then I am going to, after this, we're going to put in a handful of these meltables. Couple handfuls. Again, no exact science at this point. This is just you eyeballing that cookie dough and saying, I want to make sure that every cookie I eat has at least, you know, whatever, a chocolate chunk in it or a white chocolate chip or whatever it is. Okay. We're looking good, friends. Do we have any questions at this point that I can help answer? And how are we on time? We're good?
We are about a little over halfway through.
Okay, awesome.
And I actually just had a question pop in from Nina about what to preheat the oven, and I'm pretty sure it's at 350.
Yes, 350. You are correct. All right. So here we have our lovely dough. Doesn't that just look so fun and so yummy? I'm going to take this dough home after this class and I'm going to bake it off at home. Okay, so again, I'm not in a functioning kitchen, but I'm still going to show you some things that you can do. I'm going to grab some parchment. Thank you. I really am like a firm believer in parchment paper, even if you have like a nonstick cookie pan. I just love that it's just like one layer of protection from mess, or even if like sometimes some of my cookie pans, I've had them for so long and I baked on them for so long that they kind of don't work the same way. Like they have spots that will burn. So anyway, so this just kind of helps in that process. It really helps with the cleanup factor because you can just rip this off and throw it away and then just wipe down your sheet for a sec and then you are good to go. So, okay. Where's my little scoop? So a couple things. You can definitely just take, you can take a tablespoon or just like a regular spoon that you have at your house and just kind of grab some out however big you want your cookie to be. I would say this is about 1/4 of a cup of dough. Okay. So you could even just use your 1/4 cup measuring cup and grab out that amount of dough. And then you can just shape it with your hand into nice round cookie dough pucks, we call them. So you can do that if you are a ginormous cookie person, which I tend to love me a big old honking cookie that's like the size of my palm. Because then when you're like, I only had one cookie, you feel you're fine about it, even though it's a half a cup or more of cookie dough. So you can totally, whatever size you want, you can go that route. I will say the recipe that you have is for like a half a cup of cookie dough per ball, which is ginormous. And as a mother, you probably don't want your kids to eat that much cookie in one setting. So you'll just want to make sure that you keep an eye on the baking time, because with the bigger, thicker, more dough, we have it baking for a little bit longer, like 12 to 15 minutes, depending upon your oven, because every oven is different. But if you did kind of smaller, minier ones, I would say check them at about 8 minutes. So if you think the smaller the cookie, the shorter-ish the baking time, just keep that in mind. But you could totally do any size you want. Here we have like, it's a cookie scoop, but you can get them at kind of all over. Michael's has lots of options, but these are so awesome because you can just let it do the work for you. And they make these perfect sized and shaped cookie dough portions, which are great. So these come again in lots of different sizes, and you can use these for so many things. Like I'll use them for pancake batter if I'm trying to get equal sized pancakes, right? You can use them. I know it's not sweets related, but like if I'm doing tuna melts and I just want to like have equal portions on top of the bread, then I can just use this and put it on top of the bread. Very, very, very multi-functional for you in the kitchen. So I highly recommend these. The other thing though, is you could take this dough, and if you wanted to make, have you ever seen like at the grocery store or other places, like a cookie cake, right? Where it's just like a big round giant cookie. You could do that as well, right? You could get like an 8 or a 9-inch cake pan and press probably not all of this. I would say you'd want to keep it about a 1/2 inch, which is still big, but like a 1/2 inch thick of your cookie dough. You could just press it into your cake pan, make sure it's well greased, and you could even put parchment down there again, just to make it really easy for cleanup, but also to make it easy to get out of the pan. And you could make your own giant cookie cake. Those are fun. Those are an easy way, to celebrate people's birthdays or anything that you would want to make someone a giant cookie cake for. My kids love them, and they really like making them for their friends too. And it's easy, as you guys know, you followed along with me, that it's definitely an easy recipe to follow. So that was one thing I just wanted to add and make sure that you knew that was an option. But at this point, what I would say is, in an ideal world, I chill my dough. And I do that just to make sure that that it kind of holds its shape, but also as we've been doing this, and if you've had your dough out, the butter, like the fats in their recipe, they can melt, which means that they might spread more in the baking process. So at this point, if I had time, I would put this in for at least 30 minutes, already scooped, just like this, right? I would scoop all of these out, and I'd put it in. Here, I'll scoop some more just while I'm talking to you. Put it in to the fridge or the freezer, to be honest, either, just to make sure that they set up and are these nice chilled little cookie dough pucks. And this is where, to our friend who asked about if you could freeze the dough, this is what I would say is like the ideal spot to freeze your dough, because again, you go and you just scoop them all out. You can put them in like a Ziploc, or you can put them in anything that can be airtight. So even if you used your cookie pot, your cookie tray, and you scooped them all out and you lined it all up with rows, and you made that this was packed tight with cookie dough pucks, then you could just stick that into the freezer, put like a Ziploc bag around it, or saran wrap, or if you had like a container, just anything to keep it airtight. So for a couple of reasons, but mostly so that it doesn't smell like whatever you have in your freezer, that it maintains the yummy, delicious flavor of a chocolate chip cookie. But then the magic happens when you're like, I I need to take some cookies to my neighbor, or it's so-and-so's birthday, or it's your, you know, your family's party, and you have a really quick, easy, delicious treat that at that point, after you bake them and let them cool, you're like 30 minutes, you have it done and ready in 30 minutes. So also, I'm not telling you to eat cookie dough, but when they're pre-portioned out like this, it might make that a little bit easier because you can just sneak one out of the freezer and have a little midnight snack. So anyway, so that's the cookie dough process at this point. Because I don't have an oven and because we're short on time, I wanted to show you what some of them looked like after we had baked them. And then I'm going to show you a couple other things that you can do with the meltables that I showed you earlier. These cookies that you're going to see right here that are finished, they do not have any of the fun sprinkles. Oops. Any of the fun sprinkles inside. Does that help right there? Is that good? Which is fine. You don't have to put sprinkles in your cookie. It's totally fine. But you see how it's like yum and thick and delicious they are? They're real good. They're really good. And you can see, I hope you can see, there's some sugar on top. And what I did with these was just when they were in this form, in this life form, I just rolled the top of them in sugar. You can do it with regular granulated sugar. If you have like fun sugar crystals, you can roll that in sugar. And again, it's just like a little layer of fun and texture to your cookie. I'm a huge texture person, so I love having like all the different things in and on top of it. So these have been rolled in sugar and they're super cute. But quickly, I'm gonna, yes, dear. Yes.
How long did you bake the cookies for?
So these ones are 12 to 15 minutes. And again, if you're doing them a little bit, like if they're smaller, these ones are about a half a cup of dough. So they're big, so they cook for a little bit longer. But what I'm going to show you is with these meltables, this is a fun, different thing you can do with your cookies. Let's do this. Excuse me for one moment while I clean my workstation. But all I'm going to do is take some of these meltables and put them in a microwave safe dish. This is actually just like a plastic one, but for about 30 seconds, I'm going to set the microwave for that. Give them time to melt a little bit and just check them about that time, just because you don't want to overdo it. You don't want them to melt too much because then they seize up and they're hard to work with, and you kind of have to add some oil or vegetable oil or shortening into it to kind of get it back to its smooth consistency. But these meltables are so easy to work with and they're delicious and they're fun. So I'm just gonna microwave them again for about 30 seconds. And again, I always forget how this microwave works. So I'm gonna have to kind of like keep an eye on it here. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna dip some of them in the meltables and sprinkle some sprinkles on them so you can see just a fun, cute way to kind of elevate your cookies. And doesn't take a lot of time, just takes a little bit of planning to get some in your pantry, which I highly recommend. So you can see that they've kind of started to melt a little bit. You can see how they're kind of wet looking. So I'm just going to toss it back in the microwave for about 15, 30 more seconds maybe. There's just a few little lumps that I want to make sure that we get out. When you melt it, you just want it to be nice and creamy and all melted together.
Hey, Megan, while we're waiting,
yes.
There's a question I wanted to know, are the cookies chewy or are they crunchy?
Oh no, they're like thick and soft and a little bit like on the edges, they might have a little bit of crisp to them, but these ones are like soft cookies for sure. But if you wanted them crispy, you could just leave them in a little longer and then they'll get there for sure. All right, so we see, I just threw that back into the microwave and I'm just stirring it together. And now we have like our nice, smooth meltables. And again, these are available in lots of different colors and flavors. And so this is just like a delicious, creamy vanilla flavor. But we have lemon or caramel or peanut butter or just different options that you could definitely use to dip in. But all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my cookie that has been completely cooled and I'm just gonna dip half of it into the meltables and just kind of tap the cookie so that I get rid of any excess of the meltable that's on there. Just gonna set it down. I'm just gonna take some of these sprinkles while the meltables are still, like they haven't set up. And I'm just gonna sprinkle some cookies on there. Here, let's see. Sprinkle some sprinkles rather on there. So I'll do that again. I'll just kind of keep moving through these. That. The meltables do set up on their own. You do not have to put them into a fridge or freezer to have them set up. Just need to give them a few minutes, depending upon the temperature of the room you're in. It can vary on the timing. So cute. You happen to have a drizzle bag? Yeah. My friend Allison is helping me because I want to show you one more thing if we have a few more minutes. Any questions at this point? Yeah, that's great. No? Okay. One other technique that you can do is if you have a pastry bag, you can take the meltables and put it in there. To come up with a word that is like what the meltables is when it's melted, because it's a little redundant to say melt the meltables and use the melted meltables. So, okay, so all I did was put that in a pastry bag and just kind of pushed it down so that it's nice and filled into the bottom. And I'm going to find some scissors. I'm gonna make some scissors magically appear here in a sec. And all I'm gonna do is cut the tip of it. Thank you. And I'm gonna cut the tip of the bag, just barely, so that the opening is pretty small, like probably 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm just gonna take some of these cookies and take the meltables and go back and forth, drizzle, drizzle, drizzle. No rhyme or reason. If you wanted to come back and do your drizzles like across each other, you can see how that gives it kind of more like a hatch than just a line. And then you can still take some sprinkles because the meltables have not set up just yet, and just put a few on top. So fun. The other thing that we have done before too is taken the meltables, and this is real good when it's like a chocolate flavor, and you can see if I have a spatula that's not messy. But let's pretend I did this when I had more meltables melted in my bowl. You could essentially just dip the bottoms of your cookie into it so that, again, if you have just a little kind of unexpected but delicious texture, and you let this set up, and then like when you bite into your cookie, even though it's like this, when you bite into it, you have this like really delicious kind of crunch of creamy chocolate or vanilla flavor, or whichever kind of meltable you use. So that's kind of it for today, friends. I hope, does anyone have any questions at this point before we call it a day? Or are we good?
I am not showing any additional questions. Everyone appears to be enjoying themselves.
Good. I'm so glad. And seriously, thank you guys so much for being here. I know all of our lives are busy, and especially with Mother's Day coming this weekend, I'm sure there's lots of stuff happening. So I appreciate your time. I hope you have so much fun. I hope that you will share your cookies with whoever you think needs a little bit of a smile, especially Mom this weekend. But I hope you enjoy them, and please continue to check back regularly because we do this class often, and I'd love to see you soon. So thanks so much and have the best weekend. See ya.